about this. A friend of mine who does the voiceover here says, should there be a separation of church and state? And of course, I don't believe that there should be a separation of church and state. And I don't believe that the Establishment Clause says that the church can't have any say at all, because I believe in what the founders said, because obviously every one of those founders, about 95% of them were born again believers. They were influenced by Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist preachers during their day, and many of them attended services on state and federal property. So I have no problem with the church having a say. But one of the things we talked about is this notion of why churches feel compromised, or why churches are compromised. And it could be because of the 501c3 status that some of our churches have just kind of bought into and have not read thoroughly the Johnson Amendment from the 1960s, of course, instituted by Lyndon Baines Johnson, the fight against the poor and all the rest of them. But speak to that if you would, Christie, and why that kind of, in a lot of ways, compromises a lot of churches from doing what they're called to do.
Well, absolutely. That is a man's perspective, and I have to look at the lens through God's word. And God literally says the government shall be on whose shoulders? That would be God's shoulders.
Yeah.
So if we're supposed to be Christ-like here, where we're living here on earth, then the government automatically falls to our shoulders, which means that we need to be actively engaged in government. Everything from the local government to the school board to the highest levels of land. And America is under this barrage of sin because the church has abdicated its duties, quite frankly. And you can't serve man and God at the same time. God says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God. And when we started accepting, in my opinion, money that belongs to Caesar, that's the C3 status. You get something in return. You do this, you get this in return. It's compromised the pulpit. And you can see it in today's culture, everything from the abortion, from the 1973 Roe versus Wade, from that, you can see where the church stepped away and compromised so they could get that coveted tax status.
You know, it's interesting because I was just about to mention this, and all of a sudden I just got a brain fart right here. But Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 10, I'm just going to read it. It says, who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? Obviously, there's a double application here. Solomon is referencing his wife, but at the same time, I see also a picture of the church here. And if the church is described in the Old Testament as terrible as an army with banners, I'm just trying to figure out, where's that army today? It's described here, terrible as an army with banners. You can envision in your mind's eye a collective of individuals with banners walking into battle, just taking no prisoners at all. Just keep advancing. We're not retreating. We're advancing. And there seems to be this lethargy, as we said, among the church. When we talk about this 501c3 status, one of the things that I think I was bugged about personally 3 years ago when the COVID lockdowns happened was how many of these churches maybe were anti-government prior to COVID, but gracefully accepted Caesar's money when it came to PPP.
Yep.
Because we never accepted PPP. There's reasons for that. But yet some of the same churches that I'm acquainted with, that I know of, who were, anti-government, we want to vote conservative, blah, 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 blah. But yet those same churches, when times were good, they swatted Caesar's hand. But when times were bad, they received Caesar's hand. What say you to this? Because I have a problem with those churches. I think it's hypocritical.
It absolutely is hypocritical. Woe to those who lead their sheep astray. And there's going to be a special judgment. God's very clear, especially those who are the authority, supposedly, of God's word, who are teaching God's word. And when you start going against what's actually in the word of God, not what you've decided or your opinion is, there is a danger in that. So I wouldn't want to be any of those pastors who have been taking Caesar's money, who have been serving man, because God is a God of judgment, and he is fair and just, and those pastors will be judged. So I would really like to speak to the church right now, the leaders of the church, you really need to fall to your knees and repent, and turn away from man and turn back to God, and then change the trajectory of your church and get involved, get engaged right now, and start teaching how to be battle ready. Revelation 7 depicts exactly what's getting ready to happen, and we're in angelic war, and we need the church and we need the body of Christ to be prepared for what's coming ahead.
Yeah. One of the things I like to mention to my congregation, some of those folks we'll be celebrating our 21st anniversary in March. And some of those folks have been with me 19, 20 out of 21 years. And it's amazing that they put up with me this long as a young preacher now to a middle-aged preacher. But I always like to tell people when they commit to, walking with us at Freedom's Way Baptist Church, that I have to give an account for my stewardship over them. And I'll just give you what the writer of Hebrews says here, chapter 13 and verse number 17 says, "Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give an account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you." And I always tell these folks, I says, listen, if you're going to commit yourself to walking with the Freedom's Way Baptist Church under the under shepherd of Pastor Jerry Cook, realize that you're on loan from God. I have to realize you're on loan from God. You're not my sheep. I'm an under shepherd. There is the grand shepherd. I am the under shepherd. And so therefore I have to give an account for how I've led you. Yeah. Because it's like the great Rush Limbaugh, who used to say, talent on loan from God. Yeah. That is so true. Everything we have is temporary. I always tell people, says, someone walks up to me and says, "Hey, I got a new car." I says, "Yeah, it's temporary." It's temporary. Yeah. Everything's temporary. I know I know a lady that's about to pass away. The Lord's going to take her home pretty soon here. And she's got a lot of stuff. And at some point, all that stuff's going to go to somebody else. Everything we have is temporarily ours. And it's good for us to be stewards over it in a good way. And the same thing with God's sheep. I'm stewarding over his sheep. And to your point, these preachers who willfully took PPP payments back in 2020 and 2021. And I've got a website where this stuff is public knowledge. And you probably know this, Christie. Yeah. It's public knowledge. All you got to do is type in the church's name and you figure out how much PPP that church ended up taking from the United States federal government. And to me, in my opinion, Christie, they've lost all credibility, both as far as I'm concerned with their own congregation, even though they probably don't see it that way, but especially with the power that God would rest upon that sanctuary and that pastor.
You're right, Pastor Jerry. When I first got started, when God called me to do this, the first thing that he had me do, and I'll never forget this, on August 2nd of 2020, leading up to the presidential election, he got a hold of me and he gave me a couple dreams. And he said, "Christie, I want you to go on a bus tour." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to next year," because a bus tour takes a lot of planning.
Sure.
Especially when you have no money, no bus, no wrap, etc. And I said, "Okay, next year." He goes, "No, you're leaving in 28 days. And you're going to call this tour the Heal Our Land bus tour."
Okay.
And when you go out, you're going to go to over 15 cities.
Oh, great. That's a lot of fun.
How is that going to happen? God, but with God, all things are possible when you say yes. Literally every single thing God told me was going to happen. And he doesn't do anything, by the way, little when you're all in.
Sure.
Even, you lose some of your team members because they're naysayers. You're like, "Nope, God has got this."
Yeah.
And so, we went on a Heal Our Land bus tour, and I spoke in lockdown churches. I spoke on the Battle of Gettysburg. I spoke in front of the Liberty Bell. I spoke on the mall in Washington, D.C. the week before the election. And this, again, they weren't giving permits, but God made it happen.
Yeah.
And when we follow the direction of God, and those churches, interestingly enough, I was telling them, the congregation, if your church locked down at all during COVID, your pastor was no longer serving God. He's living in fear, which is of the devil. And this God is bigger than COVID and everything else.
Yeah.
And you don't live by the rules of man. You live by the rules of God.
Yeah.
You need to run, not walk from that church, and take your money and your tithe with you. And interestingly enough, I'd love to see how many churches who accepted all that, which basically is bribery, by the way. That
Sure.
money was a bribe to the churches. I wonder how many actually who took the money were actually shut down.
You know, when we come back here on Politics and the Pulpit, we're talking here to Christie Hutcherson, the founder of Women Fighting for America. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of these churches that closed down, but in particular, we're going to talk about the J6 connection that Christie has, and she'll give a great, interesting perspective on that in just a minute when we come back here on your hometown station in just a few minutes.
If you need help at home or at the office, call Made For You. Made For You is a locally owned, bonded, and licensed cleaning service with over 20 years of experience. All employees are vetted for your protection. No need to buy products or equipment. The Made For You staff comes complete with everything needed to make your home or office cleaner than ever. Hire Made For You one time, as needed, or an ongoing basis. No room is off limits. Laundry and ironing services are also available. Call Made For You for a free estimate. 255-2922. That's 255-2922.
This is Bradley from Santa Clarita Grocery, the all-volunteer grocery program serving children, families, and individuals experiencing food insecurities. Since January 2020, Santa Clarita Grocery has distributed 83 tons of fresh groceries to 4,465 families in the SCV. Santa Clarita Grocery is a drive-up, drive-through service with physical distancing in place to continue serving our community. If you are in need or looking for a charity to do the most good for our community, please consider partnering with us by donating to Santa Clarita Grocery, one of the most efficient charities in the Santa Clarita Valley. A full 99 cents out of every dollar goes directly back to the community. Santa Clarita Grocery operates on a 1% overhead and is sustained through private donations. Santa Clarita Grocery is at 21176 Center Point Parkway in the Oasis Furniture parking lot. Please visit our website, santaclaritagrocery.org, or our Facebook at Santa Clarita Grocery to make a difference in our awesome town community. 661-425-7575. Be our guest and experience the difference.
KHTS strives to give the Santa Clarita Valley all the information they need, and when our computers aren't working the way they should, we call Resurgence, your true source for IT. Resurgence provides outstanding customer service while also providing the highest technical ability. They strive to do what's best to improve and protect your business. For more information on Resurgence, call 349-4114 or visit resurgenceit.com. Aloha, friends. Go check out Honu Coffee, home of the best cold brew coffee. What makes their coffee special is how their organic coffee beans are infused with nitrogen to create a smooth and delicious cup of coffee. You'll also find traditional bold coffees and island-inspired signature drinks. They're the perfect place to catch up with friends or just relax with your favorite cup of joe. Honu Coffee on Lyons and Walnut in Newhall. Stop by and say aloha.
And now for your convenience, a second Honu location at 23502 Lyons Avenue between Peachland and Apple.
I'm Richard Sherman of Radius Agent, formerly of Alta Realty. I've been helping people buy and sell and save their homes in Santa Clarita for over 30 years. I also offer help with free foreclosure defense. I offer help with money to buy your home, and I'll even offer you money to help you sell your home. If you feel you're in danger of losing your home to foreclosure, don't wait. Banks will still go through with foreclosure even during the pandemic. I can save your home for free. We really do it completely for free. If you need help buying, selling, or defending your home, or if you're dealing with a foreclosure, I'm here to help. Call me, Rich Sherman, 714-1400. That's 661-714-1400.
Moms, dads, this is Cardin Ellis, owner of Unipest. If your house has ants, spiders, or gophers, or you want a free orange oil termite inspection, you have to call Unipest Termite and Pest Control, Santa Clarita's only factory certified orange oil pest control company. We specialize in organic, low impact, and traditional pest control options that are all kid friendly, pet friendly, and affordable with no contracts, and we're SCV owned and operated. Call us at 661-BUG-7575 or visit unipest.com.
Experience flawless talent at the Chorale Concert at the Masters University, Friday, February 24th at the Paul T. Plew School of Music's brand new recital hall. See the Masters University Chorale perform amazing vocals as they did at Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center in New York City. See for yourself why the Masters University in Santa Clarita is a top-ranked Christian university. The event is free. Go to masters.edu for more information.
Hometown, your hometown station.
All right, we're back here live. This is Pastor Jerry Cook with the Freedom's Way Baptist Church here on Politics and the Pulpit, live on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. When we last left you, we were talking to Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America. And we were talking about some of the compromise within the evangelical community, about churches that locked down and pastors that took PPP money and 501c3 status and all that other wonderful stuff that happens in the world of evangelicalism. But right before the break, we were talking a little bit about the possibility of Christie talking during the whole J6 situation back in 2021. And so, Christie, tell us a little about your experience that day on January 6th, what you saw from your perspective as opposed to the narrative that came out of the legacy media.
Absolutely. There was an insurrection, but it wasn't an insurrection on our side. It was an insurrection from our own federal government. I actually was there a week earlier because my private sector life kept me in DC for over 18 years. I had a place in Alexandria, Virginia. So I actually ended our tour and then ended up going to Virginia a week before that event, driving around the city and looking at what was going on January 6th. We have film footage of buses by the mayor of DC, but literally bussing in Antifa, BLM to cause and wreak havoc on that day. Even President Trump had requested from the mayor of DC to bring in National Guards troops, right?
Mayor Bowser wasn't going to oblige that.
No, she was not. So from an operative perspective, I'm going to speak from a military lens, from strategy really quick, because I want the American people to understand what really did happen that day. And you're going to start seeing the more film footage, 41,000 hours of film footage that was just handed over to Tucker Carlson and some others that they've tried to suppress that day. When you do an operation, how do you prevent or make a government do what you want, the will of the people? We do this all the time. Go all the way back to the CIA. Years under with Operation Mockingbird. Okay. We have toppled governments by doing the very thing that happened on J6 that day. You infiltrate, you have people dressed up as the opposition, Trump supporters and stuff like that. And you open up the gates, right? The floodgates. It was that day was so beautiful and so peaceful leading up to after the speech given by Trump. And I've been in the Capitol building numerous times. I've been in places where most people can't go into the Capitol. And I can assure the American people, not one entrance of the Capitol building can be penetrated without somebody letting you in from within, from inside.
Yeah.
So if you know that, they had to open up the doors, unlock windows, etc., to let people in the Capitol. So that was planned, by the way, because that would have been secure and locked down. So that was planned right there in itself. You know, I went back after I was really blessed and privileged. I spoke on January 5th in the mall in front of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I spoke about the foundation of our country from a biblical Judeo-Christian perspective. I spoke about how our founding fathers and how they wrote the Constitution and what our right and what our duty was as Americans when you have a government who no longer serves the people or natural law.
Yeah.
When you have a rogue government and rogue individuals going about their own business and their own agendas and not upholding the Constitution. It is the duty. And if you don't understand what duty means, I really want everybody to go search what duty means. We have a duty and an obligation to the Constitution and to America to replace a government who is unjust. And we can do it legally, peacefully, by the way, because we have the Constitution. We just forgot that because most people don't understand our civics, right?
Sure.
And where we came from. But J6 that day, it was just a beautiful day. And then you had this chaos ensue. And the chaos was perpetrated by the internals. And I believe we are going to see eventually, hopefully, come out that those who are at the highest levels in the land, in Congress, Pelosi, Schumer, and others, along with our federal agencies, the FBI and CIA, helped to perpetrate that event. And by the way, I don't believe it was because they're so much afraid of President Trump, which they are. They're scared of President Trump. But they're more afraid of the people of the United States of America. So if you look at what they've been doing in their policies, that J6 commission, by the way, I'm being investigated. The FBI has shown up at my door just for simply speaking twice that day on January 5th, and then being there, exercising my constitutional right to speak freely. And so I'm under investigation. fine, I've done nothing wrong.
Sure.
But with this government, they don't care. They'll find whatever and throw
Yeah.
you behind bars if they don't like what you're saying or if you're exposing the corruption. And so, but the people of the United States, the reason why they had this public hearing, unconstitutional, by the way, in my opinion, J6 committee, is because they didn't want Americans to ever again congregate in those kind of numbers and masses, because that scares them. If you look at everything that they've done, it's all about division. It's about keeping us divided instead of unified. If we became unified and we understood what our roles are and what our Constitution is, and we assembled like that again, and we pushed back and said, no, we're in control. We're the boss. You work for us.
Yeah.
That's what they're afraid of. And that's why you see the fences going up and the walls going up around the Capitol, the Supreme Court, and the White House. By the way, belongs to the American people. They are just occupants by the grace of our vote.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think those fences went up right around the time that Biden gave his latest State of the Union speech back a couple weeks ago. And I don't know if they're down yet, but it's just interesting that I think they just want that visual and that ever constant reminder of the supposed narrative they want to keep pushing about the J6 situation a couple of years ago. The other thing I want to talk about in reference to that is during this whole debacle of the lockdowns and the BLM riots, you probably remember the CHOP situation in Washington State, where a bunch of BLM activists and a bunch of individuals that are sympathetic to BLM basically co-opted several city blocks there in a city in Washington, in Seattle. How is that not an insurrection, where essentially they have called this their sovereign piece of land? And I was just listening to a little bit of CNN's reporting on this on the way down to have lunch with you folks. And the guy the reporter premised by saying this was mainly a peaceful protest, which is, of course, what they always do with fire ravaging behind them, right? This was mainly a peaceful protest. And he went on to say, went on to say, well, there was this violence, there was a couple of killings. Actually, there was more than a couple of killings and a few other things that happened. And I'm thinking, how is that mainly peaceful? So again, here you have the legacy media trying to cover up the real infiltration of the United States by a group of people who basically co-opted several city blocks of a major metropolitan city in the United States of America. And all they want to do is talk about J6, which again, I'm inclined to believe you, that you don't come into the castle unless someone's got keys and lets you in.
Well, the Seattle was 100% siege on the city, and that was an insurrection, right?
As far as I'm concerned.
And I'm going to even go one further. I actually wrote an open letter to the sheriffs of the United States of America based on that, and I used Seattle, ironically, and when you didn't know this, as my writing this, because there's a difference that is the perfect example between an appointed sheriff and an elected sheriff. And I'm going to tell everybody out there, if you have an appointed sheriff, you need to petition and move to get rid of that appointed sheriff, because an appointed sheriff works for the person who appointed them, and an elected sheriff works for the people. And that sheriff should have went in and stopped that immediately. But when that sheriff didn't do that, there is jurisdictional duty from a sheriff from another county who is elected, who can actually cross borders, county lines to secure those citizens based on the Constitution. There was also another insurrection. And that insurrection, because I was personally there, and again, it was in the capital of Washington, D.C., I was at the inauguration of President Trump. And the night before President Trump's inauguration, there was an insurrection in D.C. You had Antifa and Black Lives Matter burning down the city, breaking banks, setting cars on fire, police cars. I have the visual, I have the photos to prove it. And so that was an insurrection as well.
Sure.
But it doesn't fit into the left's narrative, right? So they're going to, usually the enemy, what they do, they accuse the innocent, of exactly what they're doing. It's a deflection tactic.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand who your enemy is, and you have to understand what their playbook is. That's why I make it my personal job to read everything I can on whether it's the Mao movement, whether, about what the art of war, you have to understand exactly what the playbook is.
Sure, absolutely. We're talking here with Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America, and I want to talk a little bit about the border. Obviously, that has been a huge issue, at least for the right, and minimally for the left at all. Maybe some of the more sane Democrats, the blue dogs, which of course are becoming more and more obsolete day by day. But you've been on the border. I've been on the border. We understand that there is a humanitarian effort to this. There are human faces to these folks. Obviously, we feel for those who have to flee, tyranny and things of that nature. But of course, that tends to be the only narrative that is getting out there. And of course, they're appealing and trying to tug to our heartstrings and things of that nature. As a pastor, I want to make sure these folks have an opportunity to hear the gospel. I want to make sure that they are taken care of in one sense. But at the same time, as we were talking the other day on the phone, we have laws. We have a sovereign set of laws that maintain our sovereignty as the United States, both on the northern border as well as the southern border. What have you seen on the border, and what do you think is the real issue there? And of course, it's not just Mayorkas; it's the whole leftist barrage of them ostensibly wanting to erase what sovereignty is.
Great question. I've actually been on the border for over 2.5 years, and I'm probably the only person who, in my organization, who has actually physically driven the full 2,000 plus miles of borders. I've also followed the activities over into 30 states. I've been also on the northern border, looking at it from both a national and domestic security issue. And while I was down there, looking at it from a national and domestic security issue, you start seeing the humanitarian part. First and foremost, we don't have a sovereign nation without borders and without laws.
Right.
There's a reason, even biblically, to take it back from a biblical perspective, Israel has borders because you can't allow others to infiltrate your culture, your way of life, or your rule of law in your constitution. Because if they don't understand how your country was developed and the sacrifice that came along with that, things are going to change. That's how empires fall. And so from a security perspective, 313 known terrorists on our own terrorist watch list have been caught on the northern border. Over 98 of those terrorists on our watch list have been caught on the southern borders. I hone in on the gotaways. Again, the numbers, by the way, that the Border Patrol and they're putting out there, they're false. And if you privately off camera interview countless numbers of different parts of the agency, they will tell you the same thing. And I'm privileged to have a lot of friends on both sides of the fence, both in Mexico and in America, who work U.S. Marshals, DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, sheriffs, etc. And so the numbers are more like in the 10 plus million who have infiltrated our country in invasion into the United States. And we have tunnels. We have sophisticated tunnels that are being found every day. I'm not just so much concerned about the fentanyl, car fentanyl, and all the drugs and the human trafficking. I'm also concerned about what kind of weapons are being smuggled in and out of our country. What kind of bioweapons are being smuggled in and out of our country? Who the players, right? The murderers, the rapists, the terrorists that are living, eating, and breathing now in our communities because of the policies, right? Policies of this administration, let alone the humanitarian. I mean, me and my team have witnessed horrific stuff on the border. And I now have a branch of Women Fighting for America called Operation Archangel. And we are tackling and going after the human trafficking, whether it's organ trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, all of those things. And we're unique because we're not just going after the aftermath. We want to stop it before it happens, and we believe we have the plan to do so.
Yeah. And how serious do you think either party at the moment are in Washington about, let's just take the human trafficking part of this here. We all know about the organ trafficking. We all know about that. But this human trafficking or sex trafficking, for lack of a better term, I see a lot of rhetoric, at least from the Republicans, but I don't really see much action. And of course, I'm a proud conservative, more conservative than I would be Republican. But the fact is, I see more rhetoric than I see action. What say you to that?
100%. It's called I call it band-aiding, right?
Yeah.
Or political posturing. I mean, I'm going to name all of these. Governor DeSantis. He's done a lot of great things for the state of Florida. He could definitely do a heck of a lot more. But that was political posturing when he sent illegals to Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, it showed the hypocrisy of the left. However, he still has not stopped the inundation of thousands upon thousands every day of illegals being placed in Florida alone. Abbott, he's done a lot of really good things, not saying that he hasn't, but Abbott right now under the Constitution of Texas can supersede the federal government under the clause of national security. Because when you have terrorists and drug running and all of the things that you have from this nefarious activity from open borders, illegal immigration is a federal. Domestic security and national security can fall on the state in their constitution. So Governor Abbott right now could close down the border of Texas.
When we come back here on Politics and the Pulpit on your hometown station, we'll continue talking to Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America. We'll touch a little bit more about the border issue and some of my thoughts about that, and then where you can find Christie online and maybe even take part in her organization, Women Fighting for America. When we come back here on Politics and the Pulpit, we'll talk a little bit more about the next issues that we're going to be talking about. We'll see you in a minute.
Your hometown station.
Our news team at KHTS is constantly working to keep you informed. If you want the latest and greatest information on the Santa Clarita Valley, just sign up for the KHTS newsletter. SCV News delivered directly to your email inbox every weekday by 5 p.m. and a special weekend edition on Sundays. All it takes is an email address and you're set. Go to hometownstation.com to register.
98.1 FM and AM 1220. Get ready, country fans. Boots in the Park is taking over Central Park in Santa Clarita, Saturday, March 4th. Don't miss Dustin Lynch, Chris Lane, Tyler Hubbard of Florida Georgia Line, Ingrid Andress, and many more. Enjoy a jam-packed day of live music, craft food, cocktails, line dancing, and so much more. Santa Clarita's newest country music party, Saturday, March 4th. Tickets are on sale now at bootsinthepark.com.
All February long, seniors are free to experience the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Guests 65 and older are invited to explore 1,800 acres of sprawling savannas, teeming with wildlife as well as world-class botanical gardens. Go wild with an unforgettable expedition on the Africa Tram, where you'll encounter rhinos, giraffes, and wildebeest roaming together. Journey along Tiger Trail to come face-to-face with Sumatran tigers. Learn about the fascinating dynamics of our herd of African elephants. Whether you want to get up close with your favorite wildlife or sit back and relax with delicious refreshments at Kajami Overlook, you'll find that there's something for everyone at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Bring your friends and family to connect with wildlife on a closer level while creating memories that will last a lifetime. Guests must present their valid photo ID at any Safari Park ticket window to gain free admission, parking not included.
It's like no other station I've ever listened to. It's great.
Your hometown station.
We're back here with Politics in the Pulpit with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. And we are talking with Christie Hutcherson with Women Fighting for America. We've talked about J6. We've talked about the border issue. Now we want to talk a little bit about another subject that is near and dear to Christie's heart. Tell us a little about Operation Schoolyard. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. So looking at these trans criminal organizations, aka cartels, and how they're operating because of the open border policies, they've become more and more emboldened. They've gotten more funding, billions of dollars. And so I get asked all the time, every state is a border state. And a lot of people don't believe that. Well, I'm going to tell you about Operation Schoolyard because every state is a border state. These trans criminal organizations, through whether it's MS-13 gangs, by the way, are an arm of cartels. These are highly sophisticated organizations. They have reach everywhere, not just throughout the United States, all 50 states they have reach, even the rural communities and internationally. They are targeting your children. It wasn't bad enough that you had to deal with CRT and all of this woke stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And the LGBT community and the sexual orientation of our children in our schools.
Sure. One
more thing, parents, you need to be aware of is the fact that these organizations are trying to recruit your children for the human trafficking sex trade. And what I mean by that, for an example, Venice, Florida, a very small little community, a 17-year-old was just arrested because they were recruited and they were trying to recruit other high schoolers for sex acts for the cartel. Drugs in the schools, the same thing. The drug trafficking, they're doing the same thing. So they're targeting your children. They're standing outside of your schools. They're pimping. They're going after that. So Women Fighting for America with our Operation Archangel, and we're targeting this as Operation Schoolyard. We do need support for this. We are looking at how these criminal organizations are functioning in your communities. And we are going to pluck out the head of the snake, because I believe that we need to go after the head, which is the money source.
Sure.
And we can't do it alone. We can't, this is a big undertaking. But again, I've looked at this issue for 2 years, and we've gotten solutions, and we're going to implement these solutions. We have a government who does not protect the American citizens anymore. They protect the illegals more than they protect the legal citizens. And so we're going to make sure your children are safe, that they can walk to the school, they can play on the schoolyard without being subjected to either sex in front of them, drugs in front of them, or being recruited or kidnapped by these organizations.
And if somebody wanted to help to fund or do something with this Operation Schoolyard, tell us a little bit of how people can get involved in that way.
It is so simple. We need your time, talents, and treasures. You know, I'm asked as a Christian all the time, God's got this, God's got this. No, God does have it, but he also asks us to get off our hands and off of our feet and not be idle. Yeah. He asks us to engage. And if we don't engage, we are going to lose not only the heart and soul of our nation, but we're going to lose our children.
Yeah.
And so go to WFFA.WIN, or you can text FIGHT to 91776. We really do need your time, talents, and treasures. These operations cost a lot of money. I haven't had a salary in over 3 years. 100% of every dime goes to the mission. My whole team works behind the scenes for free, basically. They all volunteer. But there's certain individuals, because we need certain individuals with very special skill sets to do some of these jobs. And so I do need to pay them, because we may not come home. We have families, we have mortgages, and I believe that they deserve to have a salary, right, to be paid for this treacherous work.
Precisely. And where will Christie be speaking or be featured in the next few weeks in upcoming kind of events that people might be able to follow you?
Absolutely. I'm actually going to be in Bristol, Tennessee, Bristol, Virginia, like they're the tri-state area next week.
Just make sure you've got your teeth in when you get there.
I know. It's beautiful actually over there. It's the home of country music. But I will be at the Purim dinner and Warrior Bride Conference, so Warrior Bride Conference. So love to come out and meet you there. I'm also on the Reawaken America tour. I'll be speaking at Trump Doral in a couple months. You can follow my schedule for my speaking events again on Women Fighting for America. You'll get the newsletter. The other thing I really want to, I know we're really limited with time.
Go ahead.
It is so important right now for every single Christian out there. And whether you're a Christian or you're not, and you're trying to figure out what your role is right now, you need to go get battle ready. We are born to be warriors during this time. And there's a way that you put on the full armor of God, whether it's the breastplate to the piece of shoes, to the helmet, to the belt. There's instructions with this. God downloaded those instructions. And if you go to our website, Women Fighting for America, and you go under the resources, you'll see Battle Ready Man. Please get hold of that, read that, download that. The other really important information, there's a 14-point plan that we've created to save America's future. It's very easy stuff. Also, if you text FIGHT to 91776, you'll get that newsletter. You'll get 2 things to do every week that you can do to be a part saving our future and your children's children.
And I know that you also will come and speak in churches if the pastor is brave enough to have you in.
Absolutely. I'm the living embodiment of saying yes to God and giving everything to his kingdom. And you know what? I can honestly say the last 3 years, I've been a Christian again, like I said, since I was 23, but I've never walked in freedom like I have in the last 3 years by just saying yes. I have a bounty. I have several bounties, by the way, on my head. I have to travel with full-time security 24 hours a day because I have actively individuals trying to murder me, basically, take me out, silence me, whatever you want to call it. And people ask me, Christie, aren't you afraid? Aren't you afraid? And I'm like, no, I used to be, but I'm not. I'm fearless. Because as Christians, we have the authority. God has given us 100% of the authority. Do you know who's afraid of me, Pastor Jerry?
Let me guess. The guy that's got the horns, but he really doesn't.
Absolutely. When I walk into a room, when my feet hit the ground, that ground quakes, and the devil has to flee and all of his demons. And I take that authority very seriously. I was given a ring, and we'll talk about that some other time. I'd love to come back on. And it's my Deborah and Esther ring. It was a hand-created ring that was given to me to remind me that I'm a general in God's army right now. And we as Christians need to stop being living in it.
Mhm.
We need to be fearless.
Yeah.
And take up the proper armor, get ourselves battle ready, and take the enemy and the devil by the horns.
Well said, Christie. Thank you very much for joining us today on Politics and the Pulpit. And again, we encourage you to go out there and look online or go on Facebook, Women Fighting for America, and check out Christie Hutcherson on YouTube and things of that nature. You can find her out there and try to be a part of that Operation Schoolyard.
Operation Schoolyard.
Operation Schoolyard. And if you want to be involved in that, definitely get with Christie on that and all the various things that she had mentioned there, because obviously if we as Christians are going to fight, well, we're going to have to get off of our blessed assurances and do something if we're going to do anything for the Lord's kingdom. Again, next week, Lord willing, I think we're going to have Pastor Haig on from Grace Baptist Church. I don't know if it's going to be this coming Wednesday or the following Wednesday, but I'll figure that out. But anyway, check us out on Facebook. Thank you for joining us today on Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station. Thanks for listening in. Listen in next week here on 98.1 FM or AM 1220. Take care.